I have one stepmom that told me about when she was unwrapping the ornaments, and her stepson, who was about 13, as they were pulling the ornaments out, she said he looked at one and he held it in his hands and he said, "This one was the last Christmas my parents were together, that this
Mm.
ornament was on the tree. I remember us getting this ornament." And it was and she said it broke every wall and every bad feeling she was having to see that little boy, that young
Mhm.
man, look at that ornament and have it. And fortunately, he told her. And
Mhm.
so that gave her a compassion. What a great opportunity to go, "Joshua, I would have never even thought of that. Thank you
Mm.
for telling me. Thank you for letting me in to that moment in your family life. This must be painful for your dad
Mm.
to have gotten remarried. I'm so sorry. I know your father loves you. He would never want to hurt you. But I realize you're struggling and that the holidays do that for you." I'm
Thanks for
seeing.
checking out Culture Proof. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And as we get closer to celebrating those big holidays that we celebrate every year, we understand that there's a lot of stress associated with that. But how much of that stress is maybe exacerbated or even exaggerated a little bit when you've got a blended family? We are bringing back our friend and our sister, Laura Petherbridge, to help you get through the holidays as a blended family. We know that this time is going to be a blessing. I mean, she's just so rich. Like the knowledge that the Lord has entrusted to her is just such a blessing to us. So we're happy to have her back. We know it's going to be a blessing to you. Don't even think twice about sharing this episode with the blended family that you know. I know you're gonna feel awkward about it, right? Because you're like, I'm not saying that you need this, but you need this. So just go ahead and share the episode and just share it with a heart.
Yeah.
That always softens your response. Okay. Just share it with a heart. Before we get into our sit down with Laura Petherbridge, I want to say thank you so much to bjupresshomeschool.com. They make it possible for us to homeschool our kids with confidence, knowing that we are not going to be competing against a biblical or an anti-biblical worldview. In fact, biblical worldview is woven into every subject. We are grateful for that. We know that when we sit down with our kids, we're not going to have to flip pages because we disagree. In fact, we will be amening those pages and you will find that you'll love it too. Check them out today. Our friends over at bjupresshomeschool.com/cultureproof. Don't forget the hyphen. That's culture-proof. If you enter that, it'll take you directly to our landing page where you can learn more about the BJU Press Homeschool curriculum. You're going to love it. We're so convinced that you're going to love it. That's bjupresshomeschool.com/cultureproof. Don't forget the hyphen. Okay. Will the Great. Let's get right into content because our sister Laura Petherbridge, who is a family expert and speaks so much about blended families and helping blended families navigate the pitfalls that so many of us, I think, would want to ignore. But there's something that intensifies around the holidays.
Yes.
And I think, Laura, you literally wrote the family devotional in helping families to navigate that. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But can you just, for the sake of our listeners, share a little bit about your background, just in case they're hearing you for the first time, and how you even got into ministry to blended families?
Absolutely. Well, I was raised in a step family and I had two stepmoms and one stepdad. So knew that whole scenario as a child. And then I married a man that had two children. They were 11 and 13 when we got married. So then I became a stepmom. And I thought I knew all that was going to entail because I had stepmothers, but it was vastly different from the adult perspective. So yes, then I began writing on the subject in divorce recovery first. And then Ron Deal graciously asked me to co-author The Smart Stepmom with him. And that just began a whole platform of ministering and loving on couples and women and just step families. So it really has grown over the years.
Okay, so let's just dive into the deep end when we talk about the holidays, right? Families have traditions and they develop those traditions over the course of years, right? Living life together. Some of them are intentional traditions and some of them are traditions they don't even think about. It's just what we do. Talk a little bit about how being in a blended family complicates that. And then how do we remedy that? Like, we've got our family traditions and we've never even considered not having those traditions, but now we've got a new family. How do we reconcile those two worlds?
Well, because a step family is built on top of a previous family. Now, they may have been married, they might not have been married, but another union took place before the current step family that we're in. So that union came with its own traditions. They created their own traditions, plus mom and dad brought with them what they did as kids into the family.
Mm.
And so now you have kids that have the traditions from their mom and dad before they split up or before mom or dad died. And now you're adding step parents who have their own traditions, maybe with their own kids, if they're bringing kids in. So you have multiple layers here. And
Mhm.
every one of those layers are clouded with emotion. And so that previous family that was formed, it when it's no longer existing, either a death or a divorce, it brought grief. Well, nothing will trigger grief or trauma or change more than the holidays. I mean,
Mm.
a few bars of Jingle Bells, and we're all back to the emotions that we struggled with, perhaps in a previous marriage or in our childhood, or maybe we were raised in a step family and it triggers the emotion of bouncing back and forth between mom and dad's house. So it's not just for the adults, the parents, even the kids, the adult stepkids can be
Mm.
very, very triggered by the holidays. It's because it's so clouded with emotion.
Mhm.
And even the smell. I have a talk that I do called "You Smell Good." Even the smell of Christmas can trigger all of these emotions. So the tradition are huge. It's a huge issue.
So then how do we address that, understanding that it's not as simple or it's not as reduced as just the things you like to do, but that those things that we have done are actually attached to, deeply rooted emotions and feelings of safety and all of those things. So let's talk about maybe the stepmom in the scenario where she's like, okay, but I would like for us to do this, and you guys have done this. How do you compromise on those things during the holiday season where emotions are already intense?
And also, is it better just to have a clean slate where we're like, we're just going to
Mm,
build some new traditions?
good question.
It's just better to kind of restart and say, let's do something for ourselves, that's unique to us now.
That's a great question, Will, because the answer really is yes and both.
Mm.
It takes time to build traditions with a step family.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we live in a culture that wants insta family. And so
Mm,
they have this notion that our first Christmas is everybody's going to be happy and everybody, oh, we're blended now. Well, the couple may feel that way. The husband and wife may, yes, this is perhaps their first Christmas together, but
Hmm.
they've got to look at this through the lens of the kids.
Hmm.
And so I have numerous families that tell me that while they're unwrapping the Christmas bulbs for the tree, first of all, you got stepmom that's seeing all of a sudden these ornaments that were baby's first Christmas. Well, it wasn't her
mm,
baby's first
Wow.
Christmas.
Yeah.
And so, but she shouldn't throw that away
Hmm.
because baby is now 10 years old and standing right there. And
Right.
so there's this angst of, I don't want that in my living room because that's my husband's former life.
Mm.
And yet the child doesn't want to throw all of that away. Let me tell you, you have to be Jesus with skin on to do this
mm. That's good.
because
Wow.
there's so much emotion involved. So, what
Yeah.
I like to encourage people is number one, let the kids, if they're, 5 or above, have a little tree in their own room
Mm.
and let them put some of their family, former family, ornaments or traditions or whatever in their room.
Mhm.
Even if it's pictures of the mom or dad from the other home, let that be their little safe spot for the holidays.
Mhm.
Then out in the family room where
Mhm.
everybody's going to gather, maybe we only put one or two. I know my mother had my first baby stocking that I had.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I always hung that on the tree, even after I got remarried. That was mine.
Mhm.
That was from my history. Maybe then my husband's also. And then we made sure each of the kids had something on the area. So you really got to think through this before you're ambushed with all of it. The
Mhm.
Mm.
mistake is that many people just the step parent goes in. This is more women than men. Men normally could care less what ornaments hanging on the tree, but the women, they're very finicky about this. That they either want it to become like a Norman Rockwell picture of everybody sitting around the turkey looking like we're a biological, or they want to kick out all the former traditions and things that mom and dad. I remember one couple contacting me where the husband's family, they always went and cut down the tree. Well, the new wife's family, they always did an artificial tree, and as a matter of fact, one of her kids was allergic to evergreen, and so they couldn't have a live tree. And so this became a big battle. Like, who's going to win Christmas? Is it going to be the new tradition? And his kids were resentful that they had to put up an artificial tree. So you got to talk through all of this. Do it now, do it now, do it now before it gets here.
I'm thinking about how when we have scuffles, I don't know if you call it a scuffle or if you call it like a disagreement, it can feel personal really quickly. It can feel like you just don't want this because,
Yeah.
right? So how does the step parent, in whatever way that looks, if it's the stepmom or the stepdad, how does that step parent offer those suggestions without it seeming to be resistance just for resistance sake? Does that mean you have to use more words where you acknowledge and honor some of those traditions, but then say, so in addition, can we do this? Or is it just, I feel like so much of the breakdown, whether it's a biological family or a blended family, understandably it's intensified in a blended family. I feel like it's that communication just sort of breaks down.
It's very crucial for the couple to talk about this before it's there. So in a step family in particular. So this is a great catalyst for a stepmom or a stepdad to say, hey, I heard this event, I heard this show about step family Christmas. They brought up all kinds of stuff I hadn't thought about. Can we talk through some of the issues that they discussed? Or can we get this Advent devotional that they mentioned? And that way it'll help us to navigate some of this stuff. And it's just vitally important that the couple be unified. The kids might not agree with everything, but if the couple can agree with, okay, we're going to allow these traditions, but we're not going to be so worried about this year, we're going to like lay that one aside. And
Mm.
so the couple is what is crucial in this. And again, she's got to be careful because dad just wants peace. He
Mhm.
didn't care about the tree. He just wants peace. And so the wife has to learn, okay, what's a hill to die on here? What is so important to me? Like, is it because I want at least the manger scene here in the living room? That's important to me. And baby Jesus needs to be there because I need to be looking at him the whole Christmas time to help me behave like I should.
Mm.
And so, it's figuring out what are the things we want our kids when they grow up. You know what? In that house, when I was in the other house, this is what was going on. But when
Mhm.
I was in that house, they worked really hard to hear me to hear what was a trigger for me, what was painful for me. I have one stepmom that told me about when she was unwrapping the ornaments, and her stepson, who was about 13, as they were pulling the ornaments out, she said he looked at one and he held it in his hands and he said, "This one was the last Christmas my parents were together, that this
Mm.
ornament was on the tree. I remember us getting this ornament." And it was and she said it broke every wall and every bad feeling she was having to see that little boy, that young
Mhm.
man, look at that ornament and have it. And fortunately, he told her. And
Mhm.
so that gave her a compassion. What a great opportunity to go, "Joshua, I would have never even thought of that. Thank you
Mm.
for telling me. Thank you for letting me in to that moment in your family life. This must be painful for your dad
Yeah.
to have gotten remarried. I'm so sorry. I know your father loves you. He would never want to hurt you. But I realize you're struggling and that the holidays do that for you. See, you take what was intended to destroy and turn it around and
Oh
use it
man.
for good."
I
Amen.
love that so much. I love because I know and because we've talked to you before, Laura, and just some of the insight that comes from you on just even what triggers a blended family. Hearing that you've got to be the adult in the room, sort of not validating those adult feelings, that adults also have feelings. But I do have the sense in which, in the example that you're using right now, that's adulting well. That is
Mm.
kind of taking the focus off of yourself and saying, hey, there's a hurting child in front of me. Maybe I take that ornament and I put it in a position of prominence, like, and show the child that, hey, I just registered that pain and that matters to me. I think that's a selflessness that, man, the holidays, especially around Christmas, talking about selflessness, that would be the time for that to be displayed.
Absolutely. And it speaks volumes to the child. See,
Mm,
Mhm.
step-parents all the time, they're like, "Well, I do this, I do that, I rush them here, I take them there." The kid wants to know, "Do you see me? Do you
mhm,
see my pain? Do you see what's happening?" Now, many step-parents will hear that and think, "I only care about the kids." I've been a
mm.
stepmom for almost 39 years. I've cried more tears to fill the Mississippi. So it's not that I don't get that, but you've got to get that need met somewhere else.
Mhm.
So, as you just said, doesn't mean she doesn't have emotions or that, she's feeling like, when do I get Christmas? When does my family matter? When do my
Mm,
kids get a prominence here? So there's emotions that are swirling around that, but she can't be looking at her stepkids or sometimes even her husband to meet that need.
mhm,
Sometimes as a step parent, you have to get that need met with your girlfriends, with your circle, with your small group, with whatever emotions you're feeling. Talk to your spouse and say, "I realize your kids are struggling. I just need this little section of the house to be the kind of Christmas that I was used to."
mhm.
And see, I grew up in a big Italian family. So Christmas was my nana cooked for a month before Christmas.
Wow.
I expected my stepsons to like be all excited about all the cookies and all the nana stuff.
Yes.
They could have cared less. And I was so hurt. I
Mm.
was so like, "Why don't you want my Christmas stuff?" And it was because this is not it's not related to them. That's not how
Mm,
they were raised. That's not what they knew. None of those things, they don't even like fig cookies. And so, those things, those cannolis that were so important to me and my Italian family and communicated love from my nana, because she only made those certain things that time of year,
Mhm.
they had no connection to that. And
Mm.
so I had to let go, let the dream die
mm,
that was going to be their experience at Christmas. But I did that with my girlfriends. I took that to my Bible studies. I'll tell you, I was the queen of the Bible study when I brought those Italian foods. I had to surround myself with people who appreciated that about me and stop expecting my step family to want that.
That's good, man. That's so hard though, because I think, and I really love that you're giving the practical response here. It's not just saying you're going to have to, just mourn the loss of that, but you're also giving the practical kind of counterbalance to that, so you can create that feeling in a different place. I know that there would be, stepmoms listening, maybe even stepdads as well, who feel like, but you're my family. Like
in that scenario that you just used, that what you just said about the food and things like that, for your husband, is there a compromising bridge that he builds to try to like maybe get those boys to come on, guys? Like, how should he be involved in that, or should he just kind of hands off, be like, okay, well, we're just gonna not do it because
she'll take it to Bible study?
yeah.
Well, I think there are with other things. I wouldn't necessarily make it about food. Food can be such a divider, a divisive issue, especially today. Now, when I grew up, you ate what was on your plate or you went hungry.
Right.
That's not the world we live in today. So food can be a huge divider. But I do believe you're right, Will, is that other things, your stepmom wants to put up this kind of garland this year, or it's important to her to, for us to go to such and such a place 2 days before Christmas, or it's very wise for the biological parent to say, you know what, guys, I know this hasn't been a part of our Christmas tradition in the past. Well, let's work on just one or two. See, that's the key. Don't make it everything.
Right.
One or two things that we're going to start as a new tradition. So it could be something big, like we've never had a real tree before. Stepmom loves a real tree. Let's go get a real tree this year. We'll go cut it down as a family. So that's a big thing. Or it can be, we've always only had turkey. This year we're going to have turkey and ham. And, so I don't want to hear any complaining about that. Or, it's, yes, the biological parent needs to graciously and gently drop in a few new traditions. It could be something as simple as, let's watch Family Vacation together, or Christmas Vacation, the National Lampoon Crazy movie. Let's watch that together. I know you want to be on your tablets, but will you give me 2 hours Friday night where we can sit as a family? And it could be a holier movie than that one. That we're going to watch something without the squirrel catching on fire. But see, the good thing about a movie like that is that it's funny and it relaxes the atmosphere. So you want to be careful about how serious you're making it. But if you do only one or two things like that as the biological parent, it'll make it much easier for the kids to embrace. Where if you say, I know every year this is what we usually do, this year we're packing up everything. We're going to drive 8 hours to go see your stepmother's family, whom you've never met except for 10 minutes at the wedding. And now we're going to expect you to all be happy. You see, that is a potential keg of dynamite.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you've got to make this incremental little changes. It's not trying to become the Brady Bunch overnight. That's the key. And of course, we haven't even touched on visitation, where most couples in today's world, if there's a legal document, the child is with one parent on Christmas Eve and the other parent on Christmas Day. And everybody, that in and of itself could be a whole show, because it's very complicated.
Okay, well then I won't ask you that question because truth be told, that was my next train of thought. What about the parents who want to call audible or just change things last minute and say, I know we had this agreement, but my mom really wants us to do this. So can we change out these plans and can we do that? And I mean, those things just really begin to upset the apple cart, if you will. How do
What
you
do they do?
know So how do you know when the time is to give in and when the time is to say, no, this is the plan. It's set this way. We're leaving it this way. And then because also there's consequences for that, right? Because then down the line, maybe if you as the parent need a little bit of flexibility, you've got the other parent who would say, well, around Christmas, you didn't. So I don't know. Maybe that's petty. Maybe I shouldn't think that way.
No, there's two schools of thought on that, and it's changed a lot from when I began doing this. And the reason for that is more and more people are not getting married. Therefore, more and more people are not getting legally divorced.
Mm,
Therefore, more and more people do not have legal documents. So I run into now a plethora of people who do not have any legal documentation on where the kids go. See, if you've got documentation, you do have a little bit more leverage to say, you know what? The document says every other year you get them on Thanksgiving, I get them on Christmas, or, whatever the document says. So that without any documentation, you're really flying by the seat of your pants.
mm,
And you have no legal rights to the child if you're really fighting about the holidays. Now, that's the co-parenting issue. The other issue that you mentioned is what if the child wants to do this or that? Kids are going to gravitate to the home that's the most fun. And if they have one parent that doesn't have boundaries, doesn't have rules, elaborate gifts, lets them sit on social media or on their devices 24/7, they're going to
mhm.
gravitate to that home. And it's a very difficult problem today. It is that whole internet gaming thing is dividing step families faster than I can even talk about it. And so it's crucial for the mother or the father to make sure they're spending a lot of one-on-one time with their child so that a month before Christmas, 2 months before Christmas, they are saying, you know what? Christmas is coming up. Christmas Eve is coming up. And we've always done Christmas Eve at my house. And so I want to make sure you're not making any extra plans for Christmas Eve. Now, if this year you're telling me you don't want to stay overnight, maybe we could talk about that. I still want you to come for dinner. You know how important it is for grandma for you to be there for Christmas Eve dinner. But if you want to go home at 10 or 11 o'clock rather than staying overnight, we could talk about that.
Mm,
So you don't want to make anything so cookie cutter that you're coming across as just being a bully. But at the same time, parent, you have rights. You do have your child. It really depends on what kind of a relationship you have with them before Christmas gets here.
mm, mhm.
See, to make the holidays a battleground when you have not been a diligent parent for the other 11 months of the year is going to blow up in your face. And so if you're the parent that the kid doesn't spend a lot of time with, and now all of a sudden, and the other things kids hate is they hate it when you bring them over and you spend all your time with the step family.
Mm.
Like if they only get 4 or 5 hours with you and you spend that entire time with your new spouse and he or she's kids,
Mm.
see, make sure you're carving out, even if it's just to go have a cup of coffee or a piece of pizza for an hour, hour and a half.
Mhm.
Kids need that one-on-one with their parent. It's
Mm.
going to go much further in the long run.
That's good. Laura, let's make a shift here and let's talk about the blended family devotional that you've written and that you want to make available to Culture Proof listeners. Number one, why would a family devotional, especially around the holidays, be important for a blended family?
Well, I entitled it Seeking a Silent Night because I can remember many Christmases as a stepmom thinking it is so tense in here. I was in New York. So it was cold. I live in Georgia now, so it's not nearly as cold. But I can remember thinking, I'm going to go out to the manger scene in my front yard and crawl into the manger with baby Jesus because I don't care if it's cold out there. I just want to be out of the drama.
Wow. Wow.
And so, you're trying so hard as a Christian. You want it to be holy and you want Jesus to be the reason for the season and you want all of that. And yet you've got all this pressure and stress and visitation and competition with the gifts. That home's getting them all this stuff and you can't afford it. And their grandma is doing this and your grandma isn't recognizing your stepkids. Oh my gosh, it's all over the place. Yeah. And so you're trying to find, oh God, there's got to be peace here somewhere. And so what I did is I took just some of the most common things that step families deal with and put them in a daily devotional where you can each day read this little 1 to 2 page thing, little prayer, little Bible verse to sort of like refocus. Okay, God, help me here to refocus. And what do I want my kids to remember about my home at Christmas? What do I want them when they're 20, 30, 40 with kids of their own? Do I want them to remember the fight between which home they were going to, that I stood my ground and you're not going to get them Christmas Eve? Or did I make it a battleground and we not allow them, okay, let's celebrate the next day? See, don't make it a hill to die on if it's not worth it. If it causes more turmoil for the child, not for you, not saying let your ex-spouse get away with murder. I'm saying what is in the best interest of the child in their peace. So the whole purpose is to help you. Kids only become as stable as their parents. So the goal is to stabilize the parent and the step-parent and the additional siblings. You may have step-siblings. You're an adult now. Or half-siblings. How can I come so that I'll be the best example of Jesus Christ this holiday as I can possibly be? How can I have the mind of Christ this Christmas?
So is the devotional for the parent or is it for the family? Like how would a blended family? Okay, so you could use it, go through it with the kids.
Absolutely. Okay. It can be used as a family. Again, it could be used, say I've got step brothers and sisters and I'm trying to, maybe I've got some angst with my half sister or my step brother or something. Or maybe they've excluded me or whatever. It really, yes, I'm trying to get people to think outside the box of just the husband and wife. So it's more than just the step couple. It's anybody connected with a step family. Pew Research just came out with a statistic last month. 37% of Americans are in a biological family. The rest are in a non-biological family.
Wow.
So only 37% of Americans would not apply to this resource.
Wow. That's incredible to think about.
It does. Wow. So, and you just want to be better at it. So, yeah. So we've got to get outside that box, especially in the church, and understand this is our mission field. They are in my backyard. They are in my Bible study. The kids are in my kid group. And so this is a tool, a very simple, easy to read tool to use to just start thinking, what are some of the things that they are going through that'll be different than my own Christmas?
Some of the entries here in the devotional are touchy traditions, a baby born to die, food, friend or foe, holiday trigger, oh, holy night. And it was. So I get this picture of almost being able to have a conversation with your family that you may not be brave enough to have on your own, but against the backdrop of this devotional, you are now able to have a conversation that maybe even turns out productive because there's some expression that's not coming directly from you, but maybe coming from someone who's not even in this situation, but understands like this is common. I think sometimes, and maybe we are willing to admit this when we stop for a second, we just want to have that experience of being seen and understood, that I'm not just making this up. It's not in my own head. And I think what you've written here, one of the entries, I've got God, who needs church? I can only imagine when you blend families and families have different convictions about where we need to go and how we need to worship and how we fellowship with other believers. But you deal with that in this devotional. Laura, how can our listeners get a copy of this ebook?
Anybody who goes to my website, a pop-up will come up. You just enter your email in there and it will deliver it to you automatically. It's free this month and next month.
Okay, Laura, thank you so much. Like, I feel like there's always a good, healthy challenge when we sit down with you. And I know that this is the blessing that we need in blended families, moving beyond the disregard or just sort of thinking, well, everybody's kind of okay. And getting into the realm where we say, no, there are real issues. Let's address those issues. And then there are probably intense issues that we deal with around the holidays. One last encouragement before we let you go for the blended families who are listening to this podcast around the Thanksgiving, Christmas season, your one sort of like takeaway for them as they listen.
Take a deep breath and remind yourself of what's the most important. And I'm not talking the Christianese cliche, Jesus is the reason for the season. What is it that you want your kids, stepkids, and extended family to walk away from your home thinking or feeling this Christmas? Do they view your home, this is where I feel safe? Not always everything's perfect, but I feel safe here. And so that's my encouragement. Don't make it about the day. Make it about the emotional safety of your home.
That's very good. Laura, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Again, tell us your website and how our listeners can get their free copy of your ebook, your devotional.
Yes, they can go directly to The Smart Stepmom, thesmartstepmom.com, and the pop-up will pop up and they just put their email in there and it will deliver it to them in an attachment automatically.
Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I just so blessed that you love on this family. It's just such a blessing.
Thank you. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth, we remain culture-proof. Until next time, Lord willing.
God bless.